Guten dagen, jeg heter Liz Skaff. Dette je fikk min blogg om hva som gjør lære, while til doktorsnami i man friti, Atle Utle. Hello, welcome to my Woolly PhD. My name's Liz Scuff, and this is a weekly vlog about what I'm currently learning and making in my anthropology PhD, all about wool, in Iceland. If you didn't, if you didn't pick the language, this week I'm thinking about language as I throw myself into, I was going to say learning Icelandic. I'm not sure how much I'm learning, trying to learn Icelandic, right? So I have to say, I thought learning Polish had prepared me for kind of any language, but Icelandic is really tricky in a different way, actually. So especially the pronunciation, which is usually my strong suit in language learning. So yeah, anyway, so this video is actually going to get a bit specific towards wool and knitting in a moment, but a few things about language first. So anthropology as a discipline has a very sort of deep and enduring commitment to language, not only as something that is important when you're researching in communities, but it's also one of the four main branches of anthropology, right? So linguistic anthropology is one of the four main areas. Now, if you're wondering, what does a linguistic anthropologist study? I was wondering this too, because I had to look it up. I've never really, it's not an area I've learned much about. My master's was in medical anthropology. My PhD is in sort of social cultural anthropology. So anyway, it turns out, probably to no one's surprise, because it kind of does maybe what the name suggests, right? They study the relationship between language and culture and society, and they sort of look at both the sort of spoken and written languages and how these different forms shape culture, how language is sort of is part of sort of the dynamics of power and cultural beliefs about language. And immediately I kind of thought, oh yeah, like when we say don't tempt fate, right? Like you don't want to talk too much about something happening or something that you think you deserve or whatever else, or that you are worried about happening. It's the idea is if you speak it out loud, it's more likely to happen, right? Very interesting belief system about language, and also touching wood, right? So these are two, still I think very common things that people say or do or kind of believe without really consciously believing it. Somehow we learn it, we're socialised for it. So touching wood after we say something that we don't want to happen. Yeah, and it also made me think about accent and pronunciation and the kinds of words, the vocabulary, right, that people use. And these are very related to class. So I guess these are the different kinds of things that linguistic anthropologists are exploring. But anyway, even if you're not a linguistic anthropologist like me, if you research in a community that doesn't speak your language, you obviously have to get fairly fluent before you can go into the field. And that wasn't part of my PhD, because for foreign researchers to Iceland, it's not so straightforward. I'm certainly not the first to go without learning the language properly, because we're led to believe it's a very, very English literate and English using culture. And depending on, there's a lot of different stats, the statistics around English literacy in Icelanders, and even this idea that it's moving from being a foreign language to being classified as a second language in the country. The exception, of course, is always the very young and the sort of much older generations. And my experience certainly supports that, but what I hadn't come across in the literature, I'm sure it's there, I just kind of hadn't gone deep enough in that direction, because I hadn't thought it was so relevant. But the nuances of that literacy, right? So language learning tends to cover four main areas, right? So what language you can generate through reading or through writing and speaking, and then what language you can understand through reading and listening. And most language learners will have, they'll be stronger in some areas and weaker than others. Like I'm particularly weak in listening. You know, I can read and say a lot and write a lot before I can ever understand what people are actually saying. But everyday Icelanders, in general, in my limited experience, what I noticed seem to be highly literate in the understanding part, the reading and listening. And I'm assuming this is because they are very exposed to English materials, but that they were less literate in speaking and writing. I mean, still quite literate actually, certainly probably more literate than I'll ever get in Icelandic, but I think they do it less and therefore they do it less. It's probably changing generationally, and this is also part of the globalisation processes that I was talking about in an earlier video a few weeks ago. So anyway, I'll come back to that in a moment. I found on my first fieldwork trip that not knowing the language is actually a bigger impediment than I thought it was going to be. And I mean, impediment's probably not the best word, but I certainly felt that my interactions and my data would be a lot richer if I was learning the language. So you just have no time when you're doing fieldwork for that kind of foundational learning practice or language learning. So I'm trying to learn the foundations now before I go back. But I must say I'm not entirely convinced I will get competent enough for it to make a significant difference, but it might. I've still got like a year and a half of field trips to do, coming and going, so it could. Just getting really competent in a language is, long-term project. Anyway, another part of this language topic is about the ways in which Icelanders are trying to protect their language from the encroachment of English, right? It's sort of the ways in which English slowly replaces it's like native languages, what is it, like original languages or something, right? But and again, this might be connected to globalisation processes, but I think it's probably more complex than just umbrellaing it as a globalisation process. But definitely is a problem, as well as, you know, obviously one single shared language obviously creates opportunities as well, but also issues, right? So I spoke with someone in Iceland who'd been part of a project that was documenting Icelandic words for all different kinds of cultural practices, and she was involved in one documenting words about wool and knitting and fibre craft, and they collected over 500 Icelandic words specific to sort of wool practices. This would have been around spinning as well and fibre preparation and all kinds of things. And she also does pattern translations, right? So she translates knitting patterns into Icelandic. She said Icelanders actually want to have knitting patterns in Icelandic. They can do ones that are in English, but they would rather have them in Icelandic. Not just because it's probably easier, right? But because it's their own language. And she said she sees in some translations, right, that people are they're just using the English terms because they've forgotten or never knew the Icelandic terms for some of these more technical aspects of the pattern or the design, right? So she's really championing this, you know, they can all be Icelandic terms because we have Icelandic terms for all of this. And it is one of the ways in which English or a language will encroach, that's always English, right, encroaches on another language, is particularly in technical terms or new words. And so they'll often just get sort of some kind of modification when they go into another language. So maybe a different suffix or some kind of gender modifier will be added rather than developing a unique word from within their own language sort of logic, I guess, or language system, which they totally could do. Somebody told me the Icelandic word for possum is pocket rat. A rat with a pocket, right? So they're, I guess this, but marsupials or pocket rats in some ways. But anyway, they were sort of saying, you know, you couldn't really promote a possum blend wool there using the Icelandic term that translates as pocket rat, because people would just be like, ew, I don't want to buy pocket rat fur. Anyway, so sometimes it works, and then maybe other times it's they either need a new word or I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so I've been thinking about language a lot and sort of struggling and grappling in the early language learning stages, which often feel like, oh, I'm not learning anything. So I'm there at the moment. It's not fun, but you know, it's not all supposed to be fun. That's okay. I certainly don't think I'm going to develop a sort of substantial focus on linguistics in my research, but definitely trying to learn the language more so I can kind of better understand and participate in everyday life. But we'll see. I think there are some really interesting things in this kind of wool knitting language little intersection. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking about a lot and trying my best to learn. Am I trying my best? I could try better, I think. Anyway, what have I been making? Well, I have had a weird week characterised by a higher than normal level of mobility. I've been all over the place, and I'm currently back on campus in Canberra, which has meant that I am here doing this video with only my travel project. But I have finished a sock. I've just got to graft the toe, but you know, it's no like, oh my God, what a sock. It's just a pretty regular sock. I did a 3x1 rib all through it because I like it. It gets nice and fitted. Let me see if I can put it on. And this is using the John Arbon Textiles Exmoor sock, I think, which I've never knitted with this before, but the colours are very lovely. Oh yeah. Not quite that flexible. Anyway, I can't get far away enough to show you. It's cute. It's cool. It's a good fit. But I think the stripes are too thick for me. And the next one I'm going to do, I'm going to make the stripe width narrower. So yeah, been working on that. I have done a little bit more on the Asenia cardigan by Anna Sjosvard, which I don't have to show you though. If you watched last week, you would have heard my very disappointed critique of the pattern and not being sure if I was doing it right. I think I am doing it right. I'm still not entirely sure, but I am more confident than I was. I am very happy with how the design is turning out with the wool I'm using, and I'm not far away from it becoming quite easy, I think, instead of confusing and, you know, how's this going to go? So that's good. But the most exciting thing I've been doing this past week, which I have nothing to show you here, but you can look on Instagram, Liz Making With is the handle, is I got an electric drum carder, and it's all the PhD's fault, honestly, working in the spinning mill, and just like the amount of like fibre you can sort of process with these machines. I mean, it's nothing like this home one, but it's like, anyway, I also just kind of feel like it's going to save my wrists, and I don't know, because I've been prepared, like hand carding, hand combing, and anyway, I've got an electric drum carder. I'll tell you more about it next week when I can show it to you. But I've started doing some experiments with it about different ways of putting fibre on the drum carder, taking them off, and then what does that spin up like, and then what does that knit look like? Because I do have a fairly narrow window of what I like and what I don't, I just don't want to sort of process a whole bunch of fibre and then when I get to the knitting up stage just go, oh, I don't like that. So I'm doing it now to work out, I don't like that. Or this will be okay if it's not so high contrast, or whatever it is anyway. So I'm doing a bunch of experiments before I process a big amount of fibre and do a big sweater spin or something. So I'm having a lot of fun with that. And there's something about like proper experimentation rather than just going, oh, well, I'll just do whatever. I don't know, kind of, I want to say it makes me feel like I'm being a bit of a grown-up. I'm just not sure that that's entirely accurate, because I think just, you know, or whatever, it's not childish, but I don't know, I just kind of feel like it's a different aspect of the hobby or the practice. to, oh, this is what it is. I'm generally really focused on, I want to produce a thing and have an output, like it's a garment, it's a sock, it's a hat, it's a sweater, like I'm really focused on this. And so experimenting, you don't get that. Not like this, like, 'cause I'm just doing little swatches. And it really takes a shift for me internally to move from thinking, oh, what a waste of time because I don't get a garment. So I think that's what I really like about it. It's not that it's adult, it's that I'm shifting away from being productivity oriented to being sort of learning oriented with the time spent with the fibre. And it's not completely unfamiliar to me, it's a little less familiar. And I think I'm really enjoying it, and it makes me just realise, because I'm only just realising the difference as I say it here on this video, that this is something worth reflecting more about. How exciting. Okay, well, thanks for watching again this week. And yeah, if you've got any thoughts about language, wool, any of those things, please drop them in the comments. Always very happy to hear what other people are thinking about this and have a little chat. Okay, bye.